In today's climate, looking after your body is really important. And doing that when you're a father becomes even more important. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to someone who's a father and who's also a personal trainer and get his insights of fatherhood. Hi, everyone. This is Joey Barzatul, and welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to Matty Prince, who's going to be talking about becoming a father for the first time and the things, I guess, that we don't really talk about as men. Mr. Matty, how are you?
Yeah, really good, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good to speak to you and to see you like this finally, because you've been such a big inspiration to the Secret Men's Business. So thank you for that part of it, and thank you for talking to us about this topic.
Oh, mate, my pleasure. I'm excited.
So before we start, do you want to just tell the audience that don't know you a little bit about you?
Cool. All right. So what you should know, I suppose, is I'm an over-caffeinated meathead. I am married. I've got a gym. I've been in the fitness industry pretty much my whole adult life. So when I was 17, that was when I passed my course. I finished school. I finished year 12, but I was one of the young kids. So along that journey, which we can go into a bit more later on. But I've done things like travel the world. I've done different experiences that I've wanted to, everywhere, and I've lived a really fun life. And I'm at the point in my life now where we've got kids. So I've got two kids under 2. Nate's, he'll be 2 in a few months, and Bailey's 3 months old. So we're just rolling through a different phase in our life, which I'm really enjoying, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's sort of changed the whole time.
Yeah, and I guess that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you, because even though I think women do it really well, they talk about all of that really well, but men, there's, firstly, how do you interpret fatherhood? What does it mean to you?
So for me, I look at it as being a leader, basically. And the more Nate grows up, he's nearly 2 now, and he's starting to copy everything that I do. So everything from, like I said, I'm a caffeine addict, and he'll grab my coffee cups and pretend to drink coffee, and he'll, come to the gym with me and carry around kettlebells and do deadlifts with good form and all that stuff. So what I'm really saying is that what I do will basically shape these kids into who they become.
Yeah. So is that a pressure, you think? I'm hearing you, and I guess you're one of the lucky ones, because, sometimes your kids don't want to do what you want to do. And there's this, because I know that the son-father relationship is really important, right, with the development. So do you feel that sometimes you don't know what you're doing?
I've basically winged it the whole time, and continuing to work things out. So it's definitely, there's no guidebook on how to be a dad, and there's nobody telling you the right way to do it. And it's tough, but what I try and do is just be the best I can be personally, and hopefully.
Yeah. So what was that like with your first child? I've looked at your Facebook, and I saw you traveling and all that, and I could see the progression and you changing. So what was that like, going from not having this child, and then all of a sudden knowing that you are the thing that this child depends on? What was that like mentally for you?
It's pretty crazy, pretty surreal. So there's multiple layers to it as well, because in that phase, you're not really getting much sleep. You're completely exhausted. So your brain, when I'm tired, I turn to shit anyway. So I need to really look after myself. But basically, you're in a place where you're not sleeping. You're not really looking after yourself that well. You feel like shit, and then you've got all this pressure as well on top of that to be a dad, and then try to be a husband at the same time. And, if you're an idiot like
and
me,
work and everything,
you've got this trifecta of chaos. And, it's an interesting time, and it is tough, but I think for me, I just sort of sucked it up and walk,
I mean, I'm curious, because you are a leader and you've got these good values and all that. And again, I'm just wanting to know if this happened. Did you think there was a part of you that assumed before it happened that it was going to be easier? You know what I mean? Because we don't talk about it like women do. So I'm just wondering, for men, more for you, was there a part that was saying, "Oh, this is going to be okay, this is going to be a piece of cake," and then bang, you went, oh my God.
Yeah, I think the parenting side I knew was going to be a shock because I've got, I train men. That's what I do. So I've got 120 men in my gym that have worked with me, and this is just currently like there's been thousands over the years. So I've sort of seen them all go through it, and I've sort of watched it and had their advice, and So I wasn't shocked by that, but what I was shocked about was the outside stuff. Like I thought I'd be able to keep up my training at the high level that I was doing. I thought I'd be able to keep the business running at the high level. And that was the stuff, even relationship stuff, that was the stuff that started to become more challenging from those extra pressures.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask you, what was the thing that you found the hardest? So how did you then manage that? Did you just have to be honest and say, you know what, this is what I'm going through?
Yeah, so I'm somebody who's big into obviously the body and stuff like that. So I always put my training and schedule time, and I never stopped training. I just had to manage the load. I used to be able to, when I had no kids, I train twice a day. I do weights in the morning, jiu-jitsu in the afternoon. It was fantastic. But basically cut my training back to the bare minimum and made sure that side of things was good. With the food and stuff, like I'm one of those emotional eaters and binge eaters. Like I'm somebody who has a stressful day and wants chips and gravy and a chicken burger or something like that. Like I'm like normal guys.
Yeah.
I just had to really manage that and allow that to happen, but at the same time rein it back in. Like at the moment, because 3 months old is how old Bailey is now, our recent daughter, and I got out to 109.5 kilos, and I was looking at that like shit, that's pretty heavy, and I've cut back now. I'm at about 104, so I've lost 5.5 kilos in the past few months because I had to, right? Because I was getting to the point where I'm like, this is going to get hard to run back.
But isn't that the reason why they call it a dad bod?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess you got the pressure of being you got the pressure of being a trainer, so you want to influence other people to actually be healthy while they're, because a lot of dads do give up and let go and just can you just let us know, if anything, what were the main things that you think you learned from your own father about being a father? I mean, I know that it doesn't mean that you have to be like him, but was there anything that you can relate to or not relate to?
There's a few things. So my dad's fantastic, and the older I get, the more I realise how much my life is being shaped by his values and things like that. One of the things I did notice early, like he's into banking. He's a very, very good banker. He manages banks, and he's just good at it, right? But in that, when we were younger, he was working heaps. So one of the things that sort of I worked this out before I had kids, but I didn't want to be missing out on them growing up. And so I've really scheduled out my time and my work hours so I could be home. Like right now they're napping. That was why I said let's do 11:30.
Right. Okay, yeah. Wow.
So basically my day doesn't start work-wise until like probably 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, which means that I can get up 7 in the morning with usually I get up a little bit early to do work, and then at 7 when they wake up through till about 3, I can be there and I can do everything I need. I can get my training in.
Yeah. And so is your wife at work, is she, when you're doing that?
Sorry?
Like with your partner, is it like you're at home and she does something and then you start work at 4? Is that how it works for you guys?
So she works in the gym as well. But what we've done is we've basically we alternate. So before I was looking after the kids, she was out at the gym doing having her infrared sauna, doing some stuff that she's doing. Basically we try and just work together. So it's really handy having that team. But yeah, like when she's back in the gym, if she's back in the gym at night, like I'm at home with the kids, we're sort of
I mean, it's really, really good because if you had a normal 9-to-5 job, you probably wouldn't have as much hands-on experience. And do you feel that is important for you?
Yeah, very important to me. And that's the biggest thing, I suppose, that I wanted to be as a dad. I just wanted to be there more because, and even young dads and older dads, they say that's what they regret. Like if you talk to someone who's 60, that's what they regret, working through that first 5-10 years.
Yeah. Well, in reality, right, I don't know if you know this. So in art, like I'm a lot older than you, but like in my time, it was about parents learning about not abusing their children, right? So don't slap them. And then that stopped, right? In this time, there's still abuse, but the abuse is about parents that aren't present.
Yeah.
So parents are working more. So children, I found these statistics really scary. Like some children are being raised by daycare people and they don't have an identification towards their own parents because they're at daycare more than they are with their mums and dads. So Do you feel that? Do you hear from the guys that you train that that is an issue, that everyone's working for the money, but you're, I guess, lucky because you run your own business and you can see the difference between what they're doing and you're doing?
Yeah, and I mean, everyone's in different situations too. Like some people have the skills to, build houses and they have to be out, from 6 till 6 or whatever,
Yeah.
doing that, and they get paid per hour. That was just something that I identified early. An old mentor of mine who was actually a marketing mentor, he scared me in a way. He told me that that was one of his fears, and it made me really think deep about it. So it's one of those things like, everyone's got their own situation, and some of it's out of control, but for me, I just wanted to be there, and so I deliberately set up my life like that. Like there's no right and wrong, I don't think. Like everybody's got to run their own journey. Like some dads fucking stresses them out to have.
Yeah, well, I think you sort of answered the question in your answer, meaning that there has to be an element of understanding. I think, yes, you're right, there are people that I know that are fathers that are so laid back. Right. And also, but the thing is that when I look at that relationship, the wife is more organized. So they've got room. Like, one of my closest friends, her husband will always go surfing at the perfect time. So he doesn't have to do any of the baby stuff. Right. Yeah. But that works for them. So do you think, how has the communication between you and your wife changed with the children coming?
Well, yeah, when we had no responsibility, we could do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted.
Yeah.
Now, basically, like I've got my Google Calendar. She has access to that Google Calendar. So all of my appointments and stuff and schedules that I want are in there. And then all of the stuff that she wants overlaps in there. And then basically we build out a time schedule around that. So
it's so funny, isn't it? It's so funny that you've got to have a calendar for a baby. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I listen and I go, wow, like you just don't think about the fact that you have to look after your own life and then this other baby's or person's life. So that would be a bit overwhelming. I mean, now that you've had 2 children, what would be the things that you can advise our listeners about the preparation and even the difference? Because I'm sure the first time you had no idea and now you've got a bit of an idea. But I also hear that sometimes what you think in the second child doesn't end up happening anyway.
Yeah, so we actually didn't realise it, but our first child was way harder than we thought. At the time, we we're like, it's normal to, be up all the time and all that sort of stuff. But Bailey, she's been brilliant. She sleeps really well. Like, everything's really good. She's super chilled. So they're different, completely different. And I've got friends that have had the opposite. They've had their first baby being a dream. The second one's been a nightmare in terms of sleep and all that. And, we are super scheduled. So like Chantel found a book, I think it's called Mums on Call is the book if anyone wants to check that out. But basically they've got sleep schedules, feeding schedules, everything. We just follow that, right? And that's worked really well. So the kids have, they're up at 7, they feed it, every 3 hours,
So does that mean that, let's ask this because I don't understand, because I don't have kids. Does that mean that if you have a schedule, the kids follow you?
We follow the kids' schedule.
Right, okay. The kids.
We make sure we stick to that. Yeah, the kids don't follow our schedule.
Yeah.
We're the slaves, mate. We're the slaves.
So does that mean that their schedule is quite inbuilt? So if they will be quite what's the word? Like regulated. When they're going to wake up.
Yeah. We've trained basically, quote unquote, trained them to sleep a certain time, eat a certain time, and not everyone does that, but we found that that's worked really well for what we want to do too. That's how I know, hey, at 11:30 I can get on a call for half an hour to an hour before Bailey needs her milk at 1, So,
and then they don't sit there and wait, do you? They tell you.
They tell us, or we sometimes, if they're sleeping really well, we'll wake them up and we'll force them to stick to that schedule just so we know that the things, it's going to be predictable later.
Yeah. Is there anything at all that stands out for you that you've really had to adapt? Like, I know that when I got nephews and nieces, I could not do the nappies.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I only got to see it on occasions, but it's just a mental thing. Like, is there anything for you that you're still having trouble with?
It's you're probably still getting used to, even though it's nearly 2 years on, just having my time where I would, say I got a schedule and stuff, but like I'll get up at say 5 o'clock to get work done, and the babies might be up earlier than 7, which I'd expect them to. So losing that uninterrupted time that I used to get, that's probably been the hardest, is having that.
And is that like me time as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, I used to have a lot of it. Like I'm into like meditation. I got like a float tank at my gym, and I'll go lock myself in float. Doing that sort of stuff's harder now.
So how do you think that if you were to do it, and again, this is a curious thing just for men globally, do you think that there's an element of guilt?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to I would feel guilt of leaving my wife with them if she's, because she's in the same, like the mum is in the same boat, right? They're actually as busy, if they're more hands on than the dads most of the time. So having like that time to go and train, or having that time to go, that's why a lot of guys don't do it, because they feel bad about working all day than looking after themselves at night. Where I've had to reframe it for me, and I know I'm better if I look after myself for them, for my life. So that's what I've had to do, is reframe it for myself.
I mean, from my perspective, because I'm a therapist, it's interesting because when you said that other men, I actually hear from the version of the men that actually don't want to do it. They want to be they want that time, and they struggle, and they end up fighting with their partners. So what do you think the key is that has made it work for you? What's the ingredient that you can share with our listeners? Is it communication, you think?
Yeah, definitely communication. Communication's the key there. But also, too, just understanding that your wife or your partner basically has the same needs, right? She needs to be looking after herself. They need to be, training and doing whatever they want to do, right? They have to have that same sense of self. That makes them better as well for me and for the kids.
Yeah. But also, you're a good guy, Matty. Like, a lot of guys are good guys, but they don't sometimes see, because of the way they've been brought up or the way that men have been, viewed, like say for an ethnic family, right? And there is still, there's still people, because I've got them in my own family, that they believe that it's the woman's job to do all that. So they're not as hands-on as you. So that's why it's inspiring to talk to someone like you, because we want men to change. We don't want everything to be like that it was in the olden days, where, oh no, the dad doesn't do any of that stuff. That's the mum's job. So I'm guessing that there's none of that at your house, is there?
No.
Yeah. This is just something that I'm just curious about from my own psychology training and all that. Normally in child development, when a child is born, there normally is a moment in a man's life at the beginning where the man could start to experience a feeling of not being as close to his wife, because the child takes that role, right? And I'm just curious that if you actually, you experienced any of that yourself. When the baby came, did you feel that you were third rather than being second, or did you just not buy into that?
I reckon it went both ways. I feel like it's a different kind of love. It's this real deep, unconditional love where you would do anything to protect and to look after. Like, I think both my wife and myself have spoken about this, and we both had that same feeling. It's a different love. So I wouldn't say that it made us disconnect. It was probably even a different kind of connection at a different level. But the babies and my son and daughter, they definitely, they can look me in the eye and make me feel a certain way. And it's a weird love that I just can't explain it without.
Well, the closest thing that anyone's got is really a pet, isn't it? Because you've got this, I also heard that very first time that your child wraps their hand around your finger, it is like it's like having an electric shock in your body.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, we had Bailey giggled for the first time at me the other day, and it just melts you. And you just want to keep that going. And you hear them cry, and you want to be looking after them and helping them, and it's protecting them. And I think it's more of a protection. Feeling.
And do you think you also experienced a feeling of being? I know that you're not selfish, but you're on your own as a person. You're married, and then that's the selfish part becomes selfless. So it's really all about them now.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah, that's the part that you said you can't explain it. I guess for people that don't have children, that's the part that we don't understand. Yeah. It's how quickly it shifts. Where you now, I've seen so many people in my life that have just like literally overnight grown up.
Yeah.
It's like a total. Yeah. Is there anything at all that you are afraid of in regards to them? Like, or do you feel that you're quite relaxed in regards to the fact that if they make a noise. I mean, I know that some people talk about breathing, right? Are they breathing, right? Like, do you feel like do you have you had to go through a process trying to understand what it's like to be a baby?
No, I've been okay. Like, I'll you definitely have your concerns and things like that. Like, I'm big into fighting, right? So I love my mixed martial arts, love jiu-jitsu, kickbox. I won't watch any of that stuff because I don't want Nate to see it and start to think that it's okay. I don't want him to be the one that's hitting other kids because he sees, dad watching it on TV. So things like that are worries of mine, like that he would grow up. Not that, I'm a violent person. Like, I train in it.
No, no, but you're being you've just got really, because that was one of my questions, actually. So you've got awareness, because you said earlier that you're noticing that he's following you around with the coffee and all that, right?
Yeah.
So there is, that we know that there is an element of mirroring for children. And so you just answered it by saying that even though you are a martial arts person, which most dads would want their kids to see it because that's a representation, but you're selfless. It's not about you. It's about him, which I totally love. And that's why
when he's old enough, when he's at an age where he understands it and understands the dangers of it. So, he might be 3 to 5 years old.
Yeah. So this is the question though. This is the question though. What would you do if you didn't want to?
If he didn't want to?
Yeah. What if he turned around and said?
I'd be cool with it. Yeah. No. Look,
you've always got your daughter to something. Your daughter may want to do it.
Absolutely, and I'll teach her to do that too.
Yeah.
I won't teach her until she's ready to understand right and wrong, sort of thing.
So that's a really good point that you brought up, and I think that I didn't even think of that, which was, I think this is really good for the listeners, is that if you don't take yourself into the way you parent your child, you've just got to think about the child. So you're worrying about what they're seeing, what they're sensing. You're worrying about school, which is, they're not even at school, and that's what is that? How did you learn that? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure. The more early days, I was watching it on TV when he was there, but I just realised that he just gets brainwashed easily. This is more Nate. Like, Bailey will be the same, but she's just too young at the moment to realise it. But when you start seeing your mini me copying what you're doing, and you realise, like, like, I'm a guy, if I'm having a few drinks or what, I'll like a cigar, or if I'm, doing the martial arts stuff, watching UFC, like, I love that stuff, but it's not what I want him to see this early before he realizes that that's not who dad is. Like, I don't want him to copy that.
Yeah. How do we tell? I love that. But I think that we need to make that a message that other guys get, because I don't think they get that. How do you think we can pass that on? Because I think these guys think that it's not, and I honestly think that the guys don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, and look, it might not be for them, but
it is. It is. I mean, you really hit a really big topic here. That is probably the essence of this whole podcast. Is that the way to change masculinity is to be that father that is changing the child, right? Because we know it starts with you. So if you were smoking cigars and watching the thing like you were saying, then you're already, you said brainwashing, but your child's absorbing all that stuff in, which can create the issue to not change.
Yeah, and also too, you remember, I think back to primary school days, right, where there was the kids around year 6, year 7, like going into high school, the kids that their parents, smoked and drank and stuff, they were the kids that smoked and drank, right? The kids that were in those environments were the ones that were the bullies that were starting the fights. And, it's just, like, seeing that and thinking back to that, that's probably where this is coming from more so. I don't want Nate to be like that. I want him to be able to, be athletic and, know his martial arts, be able to handle himself and do all that sort of thing. But I want him to do it from a place of knowing why and knowing how.
And I also think that you have a good advantage, and that is that you have access to these other guys.
Absolutely. That's been the biggest thing.
Yeah, so that's been a good learning thing for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's enough space for men to get support now that you're a dad?
Depends on where you look. And if men, and no, I definitely don't do this, but I would never search out deliberately a fatherhood support group. It's not something that I'll look for. But what I've found just through what I do with, the gym and sports over the years is you get connections with other guys in a similar spot. And you become friends with them. And then that way that's where I've probably
Do you
found
like
that
do you like
support.
it, do you like to create your own support group as a group of mates?
But by accident, in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
I
my
was going to
mates
say,
that rely on me.
do you mind if I ask when you said that you don't seek it out? I'm going to have to ask this question because I am a support group. Like, so what is the thing that you feel causes you or other men to say that? So for people like me, we can maybe try to alter or change that so we can get more, because, I know that there are people that are in trouble and need help. I know that from my therapy perspective, a lot of men have left their wives because of the problems with having a child. So they would, what do you think needs to change, or what would you suggest to help there to be a much more opening for people to, because guys are a bit nervous, or they're
Absolutely.
a bit scared, or maybe the other word is blocked. Anything that you can think of?
Well, there's a few levels, I think. So I think a lot of men are scared of admitting that they need help. I think that's a big key. And I'm not saying like I never would say don't go and seek help. I'm just saying that I haven't gone and done that. Yeah. I've found mine through like I'm big into like business growth and mindset growth and stuff like that. So I suppose there's support groups for a different reason, but by way of like growing in business and life, I've found that these guys are actually talking about this stuff that you're sort of talking about how to raise the kids. So I suppose like for me, my biggest lessons around parenting have come from like business groups and marketing groups and things like that.
Yeah.
And all men growing in.
Sure. And also I think we've got to acknowledge that you are, you are out of the ordinary. You've been brought up well, you've got really good values. So you've stepped into this role as a father with all of that. Like the people that I see don't have any of that. Yeah. Right? They zero. They didn't do any prep. So in a way, what you're saying is that you have the foundation, and you can find support anywhere, because really everywhere you turn, there's going to be fathers.
Yeah. And too, like, I think I've worked a lot on myself to iron out the creases. It was sort of in my 20s. That's what I was doing, is seeking out, mindset coaches and business coaches, like all those things, like training, and push myself to some really dark places to iron out those creases. And now I can see things what they are.
You can add it. Yeah. And so for the people that are new and don't have that, do you feel that, like, sometimes I feel like I just want to say that to those people, there's a really simple message, is that you'll be okay, right? Do you think that there is the pressure is created by the men themselves, or is it society that's putting the pressure on?
I think it's multifaceted. I think the men, the women, in a lot of cases, like I think a lot of the guys don't really talk about it, but a lot of women can be very demanding in terms of what they want the guys to do. And if the guys don't see from their view, it can become very frustrating. So my advice would be to try and look through their eyes and see what they're experiencing too, because they're going through the biggest shifts in their life, as much as anyone. And probably the second piece to it is understand, like, that if you change, that your whole world will change. So for me, like my one of my things is, the body is the fastest path to power. It's something I talk about a bit, but like understanding that if you can transform your body into, fit, strong, healthy, feeling good, that will have a direct carryover to not only your mindset, but your relationships, your outlook. Like it'll just help. That's my sort of
it's sort of like just what you said earlier, is that, you just got to like be open rather than to say I can't. Yeah. Or even like with the sleep, when you were talking about sleeping, you didn't complain. You sort of just accepted it. So I think that's a really big, SMB is all about self-acceptance. And if you're going to become a father, I think you need to accept that it's going to be hard rather than complain about it because you think it's going to change. Would you agree? You know what I mean? Like the biggest problem is when people want the things to change. When, I love when you said that you are a slave to the kids. I just love that because it's so real versus, I think I've never heard that before. I think other people believe that their kids have to change to them.
Yeah, they're not going to.
I know.
They just don't.
It would be for life. Can I ask you one last question? In this time of pandemics and freaking AIs and all this political stuff, like as a father, what do you tell yourself so you don't get caught up in worrying?
Well, so I am going through it myself. Like my business has been shut now 5 times. So this is the 5th lockdown. We're still in it now in Victoria. So and the gyms get dragged through the mud. Basically, we're always the last to open, first to close, that sort of thing. So that's it's been both a blessing and a stress. So we've had more time at home with the kids in the last I think we've been closed a full time of 6 months in the last 18 months. So that's been good in a way that I can spend time with them. From a business point of view, it's stressful as hell. So I just try to make sure that I'm not taking that home.
I saw your Facebook post, and it was really good that you actually were able to vent and say what you were feeling about, because you said that you were angry and then you calmed down and talked. And I thought, that was a really good way to, you were vulnerable and admitted that, and and that's exactly what you did. You didn't bring it home.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing with the kids, because they're like, Nate just loves watching Shrek and playing with basketballs and stuff like that. And Lou Bailey, she just looks at you and like grabs your finger. So projecting all of the shit going on in the world to them isn't helpful. So
I was going to say, I don't think parents realize that even if they don't speak, the kids can feel the anxiety. You know what I mean? They're like sponges. So what are the things that are you worried at all about their future? Because of the world stuff?
I'm not. No.
Okay.
I plan on raising them in a way where they're not concerned about what's going on outside of them. Just as I am. Like, I can't control what the government's doing. I can't control what, the person down the street's doing. Things like climate change and all that. So maybe you need to do a workshop, and I think we all need to come to that, because I'm not a parent, and sometimes I find myself thinking about the most bizarrest things which I've never done before, because I've just not noticed this. This is such a fast period of time. It's really fast. So I guess what you're saying is that you just need to not attach to anything and just figure out what works for you. And that sounds like you're going to do that. You're going to show them a world that is safe and open and not afraid. Yeah. Well, one of the things I keep looking into since like the whole pandemic stuff, this isn't the first pandemic the world's gone through, right? There's been so many things over the years. In my lifetime, it's the first, but in the past, there's been so many. There's been world wars and all of that sort of stuff, right? But it's all worked out okay, and there will be periods of time where it will be fine. So, I don't know when it is, right? It might be a year, 2 years, 5 years down the track, where everyone's just, I remember that whole thing that happened back in 2020, and the world's normal again, and then something else will definitely happen. Like the things will keep coming back, right? So my whole view on it all is just control what I can control, and that's it.
I love again. That's the thing that I tell clients is that there's only two ways to be, and that's you a victim or you adapt, and that's why I love you so much, is because you're an adapter, and really. There's no such thing as a bad situation. It's just your perception. So, that's the thing, is like, if you watch TV, of course, you're going to feel nervous and scared. And I just wanted to ask that question because I knew the answer, but I just wanted other guys to hear it from you, because I think a lot of parents are creating a feeling of anxiety. And, I guess, I just recently had an 8-year-old boy commit suicide in my clinic. And so this is a really important topic for me, because for an 8-year-old child to think that their life is helpless, it had to have come from the family, right? Because they're only 8. So, and then I started thinking, okay, what's going on? And it was all about the fact that that child had access to all of the media, and so you just see how they're like sponges, aren't they? They just will take everything in.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it? That's horrible.
Well, I guess talking about it and talking about this topic is why it's important, because, like I said earlier, right, today society's abuse is not being present.
Yeah.
Right. So what you've just highlighted in this podcast is you made it work. Even when you didn't have work because of lockdown, you look at that as a blessing, so you could be present, which is the key to their foundation. Because children will feel abandoned, and that will be the generation moving forward's issues. My mum and dad weren't there, so how did they learn to do stuff? They don't learn it, and so that's why kids have anxiety now, because they don't learn how to be resilient. Remember when we were little? I remember leaving home at 7 o'clock in the morning, not coming home till 8, and no one cared. So you learn how to be resilient and all that, and kids don't really have that now. No, as a parent,
it's the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, but it sounds like you're going to teach them anyway, because you're onto it. So
I'll do my best.
Maddie, thank you so much for taking this time out. I think you've got enough time now to have a coffee before they wake up.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, thanks, mate. And then we'll see you on the Secret Men's Business fitness page every month. So thanks for that as well.
No worries. My pleasure, mate.
All right, guys, you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. This will be out on a Monday. Don't forget, on Thursdays, we have retro podcasts, and you get to hear all the old episodes from the last 2 years. Look, have a great week. And if you need any information about Maddie Smith, everything's going to be at Maddie Prince. Look at the links below to find information and connect with him. All right, have a great week. Bye.